Admiral stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the blue planet spin slowly below. His 6 eyes studied the data streams flowing across holographic displays. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, too peaceful for what his scouts had reported. "Show me the surface scans again," he commanded his science officer. Ara's tentacles danced across her control panel. Images of human cities appeared in the air between them. Smoke rose from dozens of locations. Flashing lights marked conflict zones. The primitive species below was fighting itself even now. "They waste so much energy on internal conflicts," Ara observed. Her voice carried the calm tone all used when stating obvious facts. "Their technology is scattered and inefficient. They cannot even agree on basic resource distribution." Nodded slowly. In his 300 years of service to the hegemony, he had overseen 47 planetary acquisitions. This would be the easiest yet. The humans showed every sign of a species ready for absorption into their empire. "What is their current technology level?" he asked. "Primitive nuclear fusion. Basic space travel limited to their own star system. Their weapons still use chemical explosives." Ara paused, her head tilting slightly. "Admiral, there is something unusual in their neural pattern readings." "Explain." "Their brain activity shows extreme emotional variability. Fear, anger, love, hope, sometimes all within minutes of each other. Our psychological models cannot predict their behavior patterns with normal accuracy." Waved a dismissive hand. "Emotional instability makes them weaker, not stronger. It clouds their judgment and prevents logical decision-making. This will work in our favor." The Admiral moved to the central display showing Earth's major population centers. 7 billion humans lived on the planet's surface. Their cities sprawled in chaotic patterns, unlike the ordered geometric settlements of more advanced species. Roads twisted and curved instead of following efficient straight lines. Buildings of different heights and styles crowded together without apparent planning. "Look at this mess," he said to his staff officers. "No central authority controls their construction, no logical resource allocation. They build wherever they want, however they want. This species clearly lacks the discipline needed for space-faring civilization." Commander Oss stepped forward. The younger officer commanded the hegemony's ground forces. "Sir, shall I prepare standard occupation protocols? We can have their surrender within 3 planetary rotations." "Make it 2 rotations," replied. "I want to finish this quickly and move on to more challenging assignments." The command staff began preparing their plans. They had done this many times before. First, they would demonstrate superior technology by destroying a few military targets. Then they would broadcast surrender demands in the local languages. Most species submitted immediately after seeing the hopelessness of resistance. Ara continued studying her readings. Something bothered her about the human data, but she could not identify what. The species seemed so chaotic, so unpredictable. Yet they had managed to develop nuclear weapons and space travel despite their emotional handicaps. "Admiral," she said carefully, "perhaps we should study them longer before beginning occupation procedures." "Unnecessary," responded without looking up from his tactical displays. "We have gathered sufficient intelligence. They are a Tier 7 primitive species with no unified government and outdated military technology. Standard protocols will be more than adequate." The Admiral had built his reputation on efficient conquests. The hegemony valued commanders who could acquire new territories with minimal resource expenditure. Lengthy observation periods wasted time and fuel. Better to act decisively and move on to the next target. "Sir," reported communications officer, "we have intercepted thousands of their broadcast signals. They appear to be sharing information about our scout ships." "Let them," said with amusement. "Knowledge of our presence will only increase their fear. Fear makes surrender more likely." The humans had indeed noticed the scouts. Across Earth, Governments held emergency meetings. Military leaders studied blurry photographs of alien ships. Scientists analyzed strange energy readings from orbit. But instead of the panic expected, something else was happening. In hidden bunkers and command centers, humans began working together in ways they had not done for decades. Old enemies shared intelligence. Rival nations opened their most secret research facilities to each other. The species that had seemed so divided started moving with surprising coordination. Ara watched these developments with growing concern. Her instruments detected massive increases in global communication traffic. Humans were talking to each other at unprecedented levels. Research facilities that had been separate for years suddenly linked their computers and shared data. "Admiral, their behavior is not following predicted patterns," she reported. "How so?" "Instead of fragmenting further under stress, they appear to be unifying. Their communication networks show coordinated activity across all major population centers." Finally turned to look at his science officer. "Impossible. Stress always increases social breakdown in primitive species. Check your instruments." Ara ran the scans again. The results were the same. Humans were responding to the alien threat not with panic and division, but with cooperation on a scale their species had never achieved before. On the planet below, something remarkable was happening. Humans who had been enemies just days before now sat at the same tables, planning together. Scientists from different nations shared their most guarded secrets. Military officers who had trained to fight each other now coordinated defense strategies. The threat from space had awakened something in the human species, something their scattered, chaotic appearance had hidden from alien observers. When faced with extinction, they did not break apart as logic suggested. Instead, they came together like pieces of a vast machine that had been waiting for the right moment to assemble itself. "Begin Phase 1 tomorrow," ordered his staff. "I want this concluded quickly." As his officers filed out to prepare their forces, Ara remained at her station, studying the strange readings from Earth. The human neural patterns showed increasing organization, not the breakdown she expected from a terrified species. Their emotional chaos was somehow becoming focused determination. She had a feeling the Admiral was making a terrible mistake, but like all, she followed orders from superior officers without question. Logic demanded obedience to the command structure. What Ara did not understand was that humans operated by different rules entirely. Rules that the Empire was about to learn the hard way. The massive fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 warships moved in perfect formation toward the blue planet. Their hulls gleamed with advanced armor that had never been penetrated by primitive weapons. Admiral watched Earth grow larger on his main screen. "Begin the demonstration," he commanded. 3 destroyers broke away from the main fleet and approached Earth's orbit. Their targeting systems locked onto several satellites circling the planet. Bright energy beams lanced out, turning the metal constructs into expanding clouds of debris. "Broadcast the surrender demand," ordered. The message went out in every human language. A holographic image of the Admiral appeared on television screens, computer monitors, and communication devices across Earth. His alien features were meant to inspire fear. His words were clear and simple. "People of Earth, I am Admiral of the Hegemony. Your planet is now under our control. Surrender immediately and you will be treated fairly. Resist and face destruction. You have 24 of your hours to respond." The Admiral expected immediate capitulation. Every other species had submitted within hours of such demonstrations, but the response from Earth was nothing like what he anticipated. Instead of surrender, defiant messages poured back from the planet's surface. Every major government rejected the ultimatum. More surprisingly, they did so in coordinated statements that suggested rapid communication and planning. "We do not surrender," came the unified response from Earth's leaders. "Leave our system or face the consequences." Stared at his communication screens in disbelief. "They refuse, after seeing our firepower." "Yes, sir," reported communications officer. "All major population centers have sent similar responses. They appear to be coordinating their refusal." Aura looked up from her science station with worry. "Admiral, their neural activity patterns are highly unusual. The fear response is there, but it's being converted into something else, something I cannot identify." "Irrelevant," snapped. "Commander Oss, begin ground operations. Target their capital cities. A show of force will break their resolve." Commander Oss nodded and activated his troop transports. Hundreds of smaller ships descended from the main fleet toward Earth's surface. They carried the finest soldiers in the hegemony, armed with weapons that could level buildings and protected by personal shields that deflected most attacks. The first landing zone was near New York City. Oss himself led the assault force as their ships touched down in Central Park. The soldiers expected to face panicking civilians and perhaps some primitive military resistance. Instead, they found themselves in a carefully prepared trap. The moment the transport ships landed, explosions erupted around them. Humans had buried crude but effective bombs throughout the park. The devices used simple chemical explosives, but they were placed with deadly precision. "How did they know our landing coordinates?" Oss shouted over the noise of battle. His communications officer checked their equipment. "Sir, they appear to have been monitoring our approach and calculating probable landing sites. Their prediction accuracy is remarkable for such a primitive species." As the soldiers advanced into the city, they encountered resistance unlike anything in their experience. Human military forces attacked from unexpected directions, using tactics that seemed random, but proved devastatingly effective. In one building, civilians had created improvised weapons from household items. They threw bottles filled with burning liquid that somehow penetrated energy shields. The humans had discovered that their primitive chemical fires created interference patterns that disrupted advanced technology. "This makes no sense," Oss reported to the Admiral. "They should not be able to damage our equipment with such simple methods." Children appeared to be among the most dangerous opponents. They moved through areas adults could not reach and attacked from positions the soldiers had not considered threats. A 12-year-old girl disabled an armored vehicle by jamming common Earth materials into its ventilation system. The forces had trained to fight other advanced civilizations using energy weapons and sophisticated tactics. They were not prepared for enemies who used creativity and desperation as weapons. Within hours, human resistance groups were communicating across the planet using every available method. Radio signals carried coded messages between cities. Computer networks shared tactical information faster than the aliens could intercept it. Even simple telephone calls coordinated attacks on positions. "Their communication systems are incredibly redundant," reported Aura. "We destroy one network and 3 others take its place. They appear to have built their entire civilization with multiple backup systems." What the aliens did not understand was that humans had spent their entire history finding new ways to communicate during conflicts. They had developed dozens of different technologies over centuries of warfare with each other. This redundancy, which looked like inefficiency to observers, now proved to be their greatest strength. In London, Paris, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities, the pattern repeated. Forces would land expecting quick victory, only to find themselves facing an enemy that adapted faster than their tactical models could predict. Human engineers began studying destroyed equipment almost immediately. They could not replicate the advanced technology, but they quickly learned how to interfere with it. Within days, human forces were using modified radio equipment to disrupt alien communications and improvised electromagnetic devices to overload sensors. "Sir," Oss reported from the surface, "we need reinforcements. The humans are not fighting like any species we have encountered. They ignore casualties and keep attacking even when defeat seems certain." Admiral studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. His forces held the major landing sites, but they could not expand their control beyond those positions. Every attempt to advance met fierce resistance from enemies who seemed to have no fear of death. "How many casualties?" he asked. 17 dead, 43 wounded in the first day, Oss replied. "The humans are using suicide tactics and weapons designed to kill the user along with the target. It is completely illogical." Ara looked up from her instruments. "Admiral, I think I understand what we are seeing. The humans are not fighting to win individual battles. They are fighting to learn our weaknesses. Each attack teaches them something new about our capabilities." "That is impossible. No species continues attacking while suffering such losses unless they are insane." "Perhaps," Ara said quietly, "we have misunderstood what sanity means to humans." On Earth's surface, something was happening that they could not comprehend. Humans were doing what they had always done when faced with impossible odds. They were adapting, learning, and refusing to give up. The species that had seemed so chaotic and divided was revealing its true nature. They were survivors who had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain not through superior strength or technology, but through determination and the ability to outlast any predator. The occupation had begun with confidence, but as the first day ended, that confidence was starting to crack. The primitives below were not behaving like conquered people. They were acting like they intended to win. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began, and nothing was going according to plan. Admiral paced his bridge while studying casualty reports that made no sense. His forces controlled less territory than they had on the first day. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his staff. "We have superior technology, superior firepower, and superior training, yet these primitives continue to push us back." Ara looked up from her science station with an expression of growing amazement. "Admiral, you need to see this. The humans have done something impossible." The main screen shifted to show footage from a crashed scout ship in what the humans called Nevada. The wreckage should have been useless scrap metal. Instead, humans in white coats were carefully removing intact components. "They are salvaging our technology," observed. "Nothing unusual about that. Primitive species often try to copy advanced equipment." "No, sir, they are not copying it. Watch." The footage showed human engineers connecting alien power cells to their own primitive computers. Somehow, they had figured out how to make the two incompatible technologies work together. Sparks flew as they adjusted connections, but instead of destroying the equipment, they were creating hybrid devices. "That should not be possible," whispered the fleet's chief engineer. "Our technology operates on completely different principles than theirs. The power frequencies alone should overload their systems." Ara manipulated her controls to show more footage. In underground bunkers across Earth, humans were performing similar feats of engineering. They combined energy weapons with their own guidance systems. They used alien sensor arrays to improve their communication networks. Most impossibly, they were making it all work. "They are not following the laws of technological development," Ara reported. "Normal species must understand the underlying principles before they can use advanced technology. Humans appear to be working backward from the results they want to achieve." On the surface, Commander Oss was discovering this human trait firsthand. His latest patrol had been attacked by weapons that fired energy bolts but aimed using human targeting computers. The combination should have been unstable and dangerous to operate. Instead, it was devastatingly effective. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans have modified our weapons to fire in patterns our shields cannot deflect. They have somehow found weaknesses in our defensive systems that our own engineers missed." Oss examined the battle damage to his vehicles. Scorch marks showed where precisely aimed energy beams had struck the few vulnerable points in armor. The humans had tested their captured weapons against their own captured shield generators and identified every possible failure point. "They are learning faster than we are adapting," he admitted in his report to the fleet. The situation was becoming more impossible every day. Humans who had never seen energy weapons before the invasion were now building improved versions of them. Engineers who had worked with primitive chemical rockets were designing modifications to propulsion systems. In a facility beneath the Swiss mountains, a teenage girl named Sarah sat surrounded by alien computer components. She had never received formal training in technology, but she understood patterns. Her young brain could see connections that adult engineers missed. "The alien code is like a language," she explained to the adults around her. "It does not use words, but it follows rules. Once you understand the rules, you can speak it." Sarah had broken the basic encryption protocols that protected communications. She did not understand how the technology worked, but she could see how the information flowed through it. Her human intuition filled in the gaps that pure logic could not bridge. "I can read their messages now," she announced, "and I think I can change them." Within hours, Sarah was broadcasting false orders to forces across the planet. She sent patrol units to empty locations, while real human attacks struck undefended positions. She convinced alien commanders that their backup was coming when no help was available. They had built their communication system to be logically perfect and impossible to hack. They had not considered that an illogical mind might approach the problem from directions they could not imagine. Similar breakthroughs were happening everywhere humans and alien technology met. In Japan, researchers discovered that power systems worked more efficiently when modified with Earth materials that should have been incompatible. In Germany, engineers found ways to use alien sensors to detect ships while they were still cloaked. "They are treating our technology like children's toys," reported the fleet's chief scientist during an emergency meeting. "They take it apart, put it back together in new ways, and somehow make it work better than we designed it to work." The humans were revealing abilities that no logical analysis could have predicted. They seemed to thrive on challenges that should have been impossible. When faced with problems they could not solve with knowledge, they used creativity. When creativity was not enough, they used determination. When determination failed, they found entirely new approaches. Ara watched in fascination as human forces began using captured equipment to build weapons the aliens had never imagined. They created mines that used alien sensors to target alien soldiers. They built communication jammers that turned the own signals against them. "Admiral," she said carefully, "I believe we have made a fundamental error in our assessment." "Explain." "We evaluated human technology and found it primitive. We studied their social structures and found them chaotic. We analyzed their behavior and found it emotional and illogical. All of these observations are correct." Waited for her to continue. "But we assumed these traits made them weak. Instead, they appear to make humans incredibly adaptable. Their primitive technology means they are not locked into specific ways of thinking. Their chaotic society means they approach problems from many different directions. Their emotional responses drive them to keep trying when logic would suggest giving up." The Admiral stared at the tactical displays showing his shrinking zones of control. "Are you saying their weaknesses are actually strengths?" "I am saying we may have encountered a species that operates by completely different rules than any we have faced before. Rules that make our advantages into disadvantages." On Earth's surface, humans were proving Ara's analysis correct. They had begun manufacturing hybrid weapons in hidden factories. They were training children to use alien technology because young minds adapted to it more easily than adult brains. They were developing tactics that combined primitive guerrilla warfare with advanced energy weapons. Most disturbing of all, they were sharing everything they learned with incredible speed. Information that should have taken months to distribute was spreading across the planet in days. Every breakthrough by human engineers immediately became available to resistance fighters everywhere. The species that had appeared divided and inefficient was revealing a coordination ability that surpassed even military precision. They just coordinated differently, through voluntary cooperation instead of rigid command structures. As the third week of occupation ended, faced a reality he had never encountered in his military career. His technologically superior force was losing ground to an enemy that should not have been able to challenge them. The humans had taken everything the thought made them weak and turned it into weapons. 2 months into the occupation, Admiral received a message that changed everything. The transmission came from Admiral Al, commander of the Hegemony's Fifth Fleet, stationed 3 star systems away. "What have you done?" The hologram of his fellow officer appeared stressed, his normally perfect posture slouched with exhaustion. "We are facing rebellion on 6 different worlds, and the insurgents are using tactics we have never seen before." "I do not understand," replied. "My operation is contained to the Sol system." "No, it is not. Somehow, information about human resistance methods has spread throughout our territory. Our subject populations are learning from your primitives, and they are becoming impossible to control." The Admiral felt a cold sensation in his stomach. "How is that possible? We have maintained communication security." "Check your own intelligence reports," Al said grimly. "The humans have been broadcasting their methods across the galaxy. They are teaching our slaves how to fight us." After the call ended, turned to Ara with growing alarm. "Show me all outgoing transmissions from Earth." The science officer's tentacles moved rapidly across her controls. Data streams appeared in the air showing thousands of signals leaving the planet. "Sir, the humans have been sending detailed information packages to every inhabited system within range. Technical specifications, tactical manuals, psychological warfare guides." Why would they waste time helping strangers instead of focusing on their own defense? Ara paused, studying the data. "I believe they understand something we do not. They know that weakening the hegemony everywhere makes them stronger here." The tactical genius of it amazed her. While forces concentrated on conquering individual worlds, humans thought in terms of entire galactic conflicts. They were fighting a war the aliens did not even realize had begun. On the planet's surface, Commander Os was experiencing the new phase of human resistance firsthand. His forces no longer held any secure positions. Everywhere they went, they faced enemies who seemed to know their plans in advance. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we have intercepted communications suggesting the humans have infiltrated our command structure." "Impossible. Our encryption is unbreakable." "Perhaps, but they do not need to break our codes. They have been studying our behavior patterns instead. They predict our actions based on how we have acted in similar situations." Os realized the humans had turned this own logical thinking against them. Because the aliens always chose the most efficient course of action, their behavior was predictable. Humans could guess what they would do next without understanding their technology. "They know us better than we know ourselves," he reported to the fleet. The situation on Earth had become a nightmare of asymmetric warfare. Human forces struck supply convoys with devastating precision, then disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. They sabotaged equipment with such skill that engineers could not always detect the damage until systems failed at critical moments. Most terrifying of all, they had begun targeting psychology instead of just their technology. Humans understood that the aliens' greatest strength was their logical thinking, so they created situations where logic became a weakness. They broadcast false surrender offers that convinced some commanders to lower their guards. They staged fake casualties to draw rescue teams into ambushes. They even used their own emotional instability as a weapon, acting so unpredictably that alien tactical computers could not process their behavior patterns. They have made irrationality into a tactical advantage, Aura observed with something approaching admiration. The breaking point came when human forces launched their first successful attack on the fleet itself. Using modified alien technology, they had built spacecraft that could approach the orbital vessels without being detected by standard sensors. The attack was led by a team of former NASA engineers who had spent their careers solving impossible problems with limited resources. They treated the assault on Admiral's flagship like a complex engineering challenge rather than a military operation. "Sir, we have intruders aboard the command vessel," reported the ship's security chief. "They somehow penetrated our shields and hull armor." "How many ships attacked us?" "None, sir. They appear to have used a single small craft that our sensors classified as space debris." Could not comprehend how humans had managed to disguise a spacecraft so completely that his advanced detection systems missed it entirely. The answer was typically human. They had not tried to make their ship invisible to alien sensors. Instead, they made it look like something the sensors would ignore. The human infiltration team moved through the ship with frightening efficiency. They were not trying to destroy the vessel or capture the crew. Instead, they were downloading every piece of information they could access and planting devices that would allow them to monitor communications. By the time security forces located the intruders, they had already completed their mission. The humans fought their way back to their small ship and escaped, but the damage was done. They now had access to military codes, fleet positions, and strategic planning documents that would make future resistance efforts devastatingly effective. "They came here to rob us," said in disbelief. "They infiltrated the most heavily defended ship in the fleet just to steal information." The raid's success had immediate consequences throughout space. Armed with detailed intelligence about fleet movements and defensive capabilities, human-trained resistance groups struck at targets across dozens of star systems. Colonial administrators who had maintained order for centuries suddenly found themselves facing coordinated uprisings. "The humans have created a revolution," reported Admiral Al during another emergency communication. "Not just on Earth, but everywhere we have colonies. Our subject species are demanding the same freedoms humans fight for." Ara studied reports flowing in from across the hegemony's territory. The pattern was unmistakable. Species that had been compliant for generations were suddenly questioning authority. They were using human-developed tactics to challenge occupying forces and human-inspired philosophy to justify their rebellion. "Admiral," she said quietly, "we may have awakened something that cannot be contained." The humans had achieved what no military force in history had managed. They had made the Empire's own success into a weakness. The hegemony's vast size and numerous subject populations, once sources of strength, were now vulnerabilities that human ideas could exploit. "Sir," communications officer announced, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth's unified government." "Put it through." A human appeared on the main screen. She was middle-aged with gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice carried absolute determination. "Admiral, I am Secretary General of the United Earth Defense Council. I have a proposal for you." "You are in no position to make proposals." "I think we are. Your empire is currently fighting rebellion on 47 worlds. Your casualty rates are increasing every day. Your subject populations are demanding independence. All of this stems from your decision to attack Earth." Wanted to deny her words, but the reports on his desk confirmed everything she said. "Here is our proposal," Secretary General continued. "Withdraw all forces from Earth immediately. Recognize our independence and establish a non-aggression treaty. In return, we will stop teaching your subjects how to fight you." And if we refuse? The human smiled, but there was no humor in her expression. Then we will continue doing what we do best, adapting, surviving, and helping others do the same. Eventually, you will run out of ships to send against us. For the first time in his career, Admiral faced an enemy that offered him defeat or negotiation, with no option for victory. Admiral stood before the High Council of the Hegemony, knowing his career was over. The massive chamber filled with the Empire's most powerful leaders felt cold despite the warm air. Every eye was focused on him with disappointment and barely contained anger. "Explain," commanded Supreme Chancellor, "how a single primitive planet has brought our empire to the edge of collapse." The report spread across the council chamber told a story of unprecedented disaster. 47 colonial worlds were in open rebellion. 3 entire fleets had been recalled from expansion duties to deal with insurgencies. The hegemony's 1,000-year reign of order was crumbling. "The humans are not what they appeared to be," began carefully. "Our initial assessment was based on logical analysis of their technology and social structures. We failed to account for their psychological characteristics." "You mean you failed to account for anything relevant?" snapped Admiral, commander of the Second Fleet. "My forces are fighting guerrilla wars on 12 different worlds because your primitives taught our slaves to resist." Had no defense for that accusation. The humans had indeed spread their resistance methods throughout space with terrifying effectiveness. Worse, they had done something no conquered species had ever attempted. They had made their fight into everyone's fight. "Show them the transmission," ordered the Supreme Chancellor. The chamber's main display activated, showing a human broadcast that had been sent to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The speaker was the same woman who had negotiated with Secretary General of Earth's unified government. "To all sentient beings living under occupation," she said, her words translated into hundreds of languages. "We are the humans of Earth. Like many of you, we face an enemy with superior technology and greater numbers. But we have learned that no empire can defeat a people who refuse to surrender." The broadcast continued with detailed instructions for resistance operations, psychological warfare techniques, and methods for building hidden communication networks. It was a complete manual for overthrowing any occupying force, regardless of technological advantages. "This transmission has reached an estimated 2 trillion beings across the galaxy," reported the intelligence director. "Early responses suggest that resistance movements are forming on worlds that have been peaceful for centuries." Supreme Chancellor turned his attention to Aura, who had been brought to the council as the expedition's science officer. "You studied these humans most closely. Explain their nature." Aura stepped forward, her tentacles trembling slightly with nervousness. "Honored Council, the humans are persistence predators, not in the physical sense but in every other way. They do not give up when faced with superior force. Instead, they adapt and continue fighting until their enemies tire. That does not explain their ability to inspire rebellion across our empire." "No, Chancellor, but their philosophy does. Humans believe that freedom is more valuable than safety. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves. More importantly, they believe that everyone deserves this freedom, not just their own species." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The empire was built on the principle that advanced civilizations had the right to rule primitive ones. Humans rejected this principle completely and were willing to fight to prove it wrong. "They have made our greatest strength into our greatest weakness," Aura continued. "Our empire's size means we have many subject populations who can be inspired to rebel. Our logical thinking makes us predictable. Our technological superiority creates dependency that can be disrupted." Admiral watched the council's reaction to Aura's analysis. The truth was becoming clear to all of them. The humans had not just defeated a military force, They had exposed fundamental flaws in the entire imperial system. "What do the humans want?" asked the Supreme Chancellor. "Complete withdrawal from their territory and recognition of their independence," replied. "They have also demanded that we establish a non-aggression treaty covering any species that chooses independence from the hegemony." "Impossible. That would mean the end of our empire." "Perhaps," said Aura quietly, "but continuing to fight them might mean the end of our civilization." Reports continued to arrive from across space. The humans had launched successful raids on 3 more fleet installations, using the same infiltration techniques that had penetrated its flagship. They had somehow convinced 2 entire colonial governments to declare independence and join their resistance network. Most disturbing of all, several citizens had publicly questioned their government's right to rule other species. "Sir," announced a messenger who entered the chamber, "we have received another transmission from Earth." The display showed Secretary General once again, but this time she was not alone. Representatives from dozens of alien species stood beside her, all looking directly into the camera with expressions of determination. "People of the galaxy," began, "today marks the formation of the Free Worlds Alliance. Any species that chooses independence from imperial rule can join us. We offer mutual defense, shared technology, and the promise that no world will stand alone against oppression." The camera panned across the diverse group of beings standing with the human leader. Some were former subjects who had successfully rebelled. Others were species that had never been conquered, but now sought protection in numbers. All of them carried weapons and equipment that clearly showed human technological improvements. "The hegemony is welcome to join this alliance as an equal member," continued, "but they will not be permitted to continue enslaving other species. The age of galactic empires is ending. The age of free cooperation begins now." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. In less than 3 months, a single primitive planet had created an alternative to imperial rule that was spreading across the galaxy faster than any military force could contain it. Supreme Chancellor finally spoke. "Admiral, you will return to Earth and accept their terms. All forces will withdraw from human territory immediately." "What about our colonial rebellions?" "We will deal with those separately. But we will not continue a war that we cannot win against an enemy that grows stronger with every battle." As the council session ended, Aura approached her former admiral. "Sir, what will you tell the humans when you surrender?" Considered the question carefully. "I will tell them the truth, that they have taught the galaxy something we thought was impossible, that strength comes from freedom, not domination." 2 weeks later, Admiral stood once again on the bridge of his flagship, but this time he was preparing to leave Earth's solar system forever. The human delegation had been surprisingly gracious in victory, offering medical aid for wounded and even sharing some of their technological innovations. "They are not cruel in triumph," he observed to Aura, "another lesson for us to learn." As the fleet departed, Earth's new space stations and defensive platforms tracked their movement. The humans had built an impressive network of orbital defenses using captured alien technology enhanced with their own innovations. But more importantly, they had built something that would spread throughout the galaxy, the idea that freedom was worth fighting for. "Sir," Aura said as Earth shrank behind them, "what do you think will happen to the hegemony?" "We will survive," replied, "but we will never be the same. The humans have shown us that there are different ways to build civilization. Perhaps it is time we learned from them instead of trying to conquer them." The Admiral looked at his tactical displays one last time, studying the species that had defeated his fleet without destroying it. Humans were indeed persistence predators, but not in the way anyone had expected. They hunted down injustice and oppression wherever they found it, and they never stopped until their prey was extinct. "Log this in the permanent records," he ordered. "Let all future commanders know humans are not prey, They are hunters, and they hunt for everyone's freedom. As the fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Earth system behind, a new age was beginning across the galaxy. An age where empires would have to justify their existence, where freedom would be defended by alliance rather than conquest, and where a small blue planet had taught the universe that the strongest force in existence was not technology or numbers, but the refusal to surrender what was right. The humans had won more than a war. They had won the future.